I swear, man, if you told me back then that one day I'd be running from the noise of the whole damn world and hiding out beside a quiet little lake in the middle of nowhere America, I would have laughed you straight out the room and gone back to the grind, because that's all my life was at the time, just grind after grind, alarm clocks going off at ungodly hours, coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard, traffic jams that stretched across the freeway like punishment for being alive, work calls that kept buzzing even when I was in the damn grocery store or half asleep on my couch, and those long city nights where the sirens never shut up and the street lights buzzed like angry insects, and I started feeling like my soul was living on borrowed time because everything inside me felt stretched thin and brittle, like one more bad day would snap me clean in half, and the universe must have finally gotten tired of watching me fall apart, because when my last inspection contract wrapped up and the payout finally hit my account, I knew I had two options: keep living like a stressed out zombie or disappear before the city ate me alive. And trust me, man, option two tasted real sweet. So I packed up what little I actually cared about, shoved the rest in a storage unit, and aimed my truck toward the horizon with no damn plan except get out and breathe for once in my life. And the farther I drove, the lighter I felt, like every mile peeled another layer of noise off my skin. The highways thinned out, the buildings got smaller, the sky got bigger, the air started smelling like trees and dirt instead of exhaust fumes and frustration, and for the first time in years my lungs weren't fighting me with every breath. And then, one random afternoon when I was driving down some back road that barely showed up on the GPS, I saw it tucked behind a mess of oaks and pines like it didn't want anybody else to find it. A lake, man, a real lake, not some overcrowded tourist mess with screaming kids and paddle boats clanking everywhere, but a quiet stretch of water, so still it looked like the sky laid down to rest on it. And there was this old, beat-down cabin leaning sideways like it had been waiting for years for someone dumb enough or brave enough to fix it up. Shingles missing, windows cracked, porch sagging like an old man's back, but the bones were solid, and the land around it felt untouched and peaceful in a way that hit me right in the chest like, yeah, this is where you stop running. So I did something I'd never done in my entire messed up life. I followed my gut and bought it cash, no second guessing, no spreadsheet calculations, no backup plan, just a handshake, a signature, and a key that looked older than my truck. And when I stepped into that dusty, empty cabin for the first time, something in me went, damn, maybe I can start over here. Maybe I can actually breathe again. And so I rebuilt the place with my own two hands, not because I wanted a pretty Instagram cabin or whatever, but because every board I nailed down felt like a bandage on something inside me that had been bleeding way too long. I fixed those broken windows, replaced the sagging beams, sanded the floors until my arms went numb, rebuilt the porch so sturdy you could swing an elephant on it. And every morning I'd wake up to lights slipping through the trees and feel this weird quiet settle over me, a quiet that didn't demand anything, didn't judge me, didn't rush me, just wrapped around me like, hey man, you made it, you survived, and now you get to rest. And I'd sit on that porch with a mug of coffee, so black it could wake the dead, and watch the mist rise off the lake like the earth itself exhaling, and the ducks gliding across the water like brush strokes on a painting. And it hit me over and over, this lake wasn't just a place, it was medicine, man, medicine for a guy who didn't even realize how sick he'd gotten from the world. And the evenings were even better. I'd slide my little kayak into the glassy water and paddle out toward the center, letting the ripples behind me erase the noise in my head, watching the sky go from honey gold to deep purple and feeling that sweet silence that settles over everything right before the stars show up, like tiny promises that maybe things will be okay again. And for the first time since I was a kid, I felt like a human being, not a machine punching a clock or a number on someone's spreadsheet, but a real person with a heartbeat and a home and something worth protecting. And that lake became mine, not in the ownership sense, but in that deep soul sense where you look at a place and know it saved you before you even knew you needed saving. So I guarded it. I kept it clean, fixed drainage lines, built little natural filtration areas with rocks and reeds, made sure the water stayed healthy and untouched, because this wasn't just a lake, it was my sanctuary, my reset button, my escape from everything loud and ugly in the world. And then, of course, because life loves throwing curveballs, the neighbors up the hill started filling their fancy new houses, and with them came the one thing everybody in America fears: Almost as much as taxes the HOA, and I swear those 3 letters alone make my eye twitch because these folks roll in with matching mailboxes and grass height rules and newsletters full of passive-aggressive nonsense, and I wanted nothing to do with any of that, and thank God my land sat just outside their stupid boundary lines, so I figured cool they stay up there with their manicured lawns and overly excited welcome committees, and I stay down here with my peace and my trees, and we never have to bother each other, but life doesn't work that clean, man, because one warm afternoon while I was knee-deep in mud working on a filtration trench, I heard footsteps, and here comes this woman in a cream pantsuit marching toward me like she owns the whole county. Silver blonde hair, sprayed stiff smile, so tight, it looked like her face was regretting it, eyes sharp, like she could calculate your net worth just by breathing in your direction. She introduced herself as the HOA president. And something about her voice told me she didn't come down here for a neighborly chat. She asked me a bunch of questions about my land, hinted that maybe it fell under some historic watershed nonsense, tried to slide in this fake friendly talk about community and harmony and whatever, and I just nodded politely, told her straight my parcel ain't part of your HOA, lady, and it's staying that way, and her smile twitched like I slapped her pride right across the jaw. She hovered like she expected me to invite her for lemonade or something, then she left, and you'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Nope, because peace doesn't vanish with a scream, it fades with little warnings, little shadows, and I started noticing weird stuff. Like the faint buzzing of a drone over the tree line, drifting too low, then zipping off toward the subdivision when I waved like someone didn't want to get caught. Then a black SUV creeping along the edge of my land, stopping, starting rolling again. Windows tinted so dark the CIA would be jealous. Then one day a stranger with a clipboard on my property measuring things that weren't his business, wearing a cap low and a jagged black tattoo wrapped around his wrist that stuck in my mind like a thorn, and even though my gut screamed something was off, I shrugged it off because I didn't want to believe trouble was stalking me in paradise. But the lake, it felt different. The air felt tight, like the world was holding its breath, and I didn't know it then, but that lake that saved my life was about to become the battleground for a fight I had no idea was coming, and all the little signs, the drone, the SUV, the tattooed stranger, they were just the first drops before the storm that would hit me like a freight train and change everything I loved forever. The crazy thing about peace is how damn fragile it is. Like you think you've finally carved out a little corner of the universe that belongs only to you and your heartbeat and your memories, but then something small sneaks in under the door, a sound, a shadow, a feeling, and suddenly your whole world tilts just enough to make your bones uneasy. And that's exactly how it started, the slow, quiet shift that felt like someone walking across my grave, even though I was very much alive and breathing the air off that lake and pretending the outside world didn't exist anymore. And at first it was nothing, just a strange buzzing in the sky. One morning, while I was stacking rocks for a new drainage line, this thin electric hum that didn't fit the soundtrack of my land, because my lake had its own music, ducks splashing, frogs tuning up, crickets scratching their little legs together, and the soft slap of water on the shore. But this sound was different, synthetic too, clean too, smooth too, artificial. And when I looked up there, it was a drone floating over the tree line like some nosy mechanical vulture, gray, sleek camera dangling under it like a little metal eye watching me. And I don't know why, but it pissed me off instantly. Maybe because nobody had the right to spy on my sanctuary, or maybe because deep down I felt something shift inside me, like this was the first crack in the shell of my peace. So I waved up at it, not friendly, more like I see you, and whoever was piloting it must have panicked, because that thing shot up into the sky and zipped back toward the subdivision like a guilty kid who got caught stealing cookies. But I shrugged it off because, hey, maybe some neighbor bought a new toy right then. A couple days later, I noticed a black SUV creeping along the edge of my land, moving real slow, windows tinted darker than midnight, stopping and rolling, stopping and rolling like someone was studying my property line, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Even though I tried to play it cool, I stood at the water's edge, hands on my hips, like I wasn't bothered, even though inside something was shifting, like the lake was whispering, hey man, something's coming. But again, I brushed it off. Because who wants to believe their peace is being hunted, right? Then the weirdest moment arrived on a Wednesday afternoon when I was hauling rocks across the back slope, wearing my old boots with the torn heel and sweating through my shirt, when I noticed a guy standing at the far corner of my land, ball cap pulled low, clipboard in one hand, some kind of GPS tool in the other. He wasn't sightseeing, he wasn't hiking, he wasn't even pretending to be casual. he was measuring things angles. Distances, lines, and the way he tensed up when he realized I'd spotted him was enough to make my blood run weird cold. So I yelled, "Hey man, can I help you?" And he jerked around startled like I'd caught him stealing from my fridge the clipboard. Dropped a little, his eyes got wide, and he mumbled something about boundary verification, and I asked whose authority, and he didn't answer because he didn't have an answer. He just turned around and walked way too fast toward this white truck. Parked under the trees, no logos, no plates I recognized. And when he climbed in and the door swung shut, I caught a clear glimpse of his left wrist, and that damn tattoo wrapped around it, jagged and black and sharp, like someone carved anger into his skin. And the minute I saw it, my stomach turned, but instead of trusting that instinct like any smart man would have, I convinced myself it was nothing, because peace makes you soft, peace makes you ignore danger, because accepting danger means accepting that the quiet life you rebuilt might not last forever. So I let him drive away, watched his truck vanish down the dirt road, and told myself to stop being paranoid, even though that tattoo stuck in my brain like a splinter, and the drone buzz echoed in my ears even when it wasn't there, and the black SUV started showing up more often, sometimes parked long enough to make me walk outside and stare at it, until it rolled away like it didn't want a confrontation. And that's when the small weird glitches in my world started adding up like puzzle pieces I didn't want to connect, because connecting them meant something big and ugly was coming for me. And the lake kept getting quieter in a way that wasn't peaceful but heavy, like the water itself was holding its breath. And all the while I convinced myself it was fine, that the HOA lady had just gotten curious about my land, that maybe they wanted to know if my drainage lines affected their side of the watershed. Or maybe their drone pilots were just bored teens. Even though the drone wasn't some Walmart toy, it was high-end, smooth, balanced with stabilizers and a clean camera, and no teenager I knew flew a drone that professionally. In one night, sitting on my porch with my coffee gone cold, I watched the tree lines sway in the wind, and that buzzing sound drifted faint through the dark, like something hovering just out of sight. And it hit me like a punch that my peace wasn't just fading, it was being taken piece by someone who wanted my land, someone who looked at my lake the way vultures look at roadkill, someone who thought if they studied me long enough, watched me long enough, planned long enough, they could take what I built and own what I loved. And I brushed it off again like a fool. But peace, man, peace always warns you before it breaks. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And I ignored every whisper, every warning, every cold shiver crawling down my spine when that drone dipped too low, or when that SUV sat too still, or when that tattoo wrapped around that stranger's wrist flashed through my mind in a way that made my bones ache. Because somewhere deep down I knew this wasn't curiosity, this wasn't neighbors being nosy, this was someone preparing something, someone measuring something, someone wanting something that wasn't theirs. And the worst part was I had no idea that the storm wasn't coming. The storm was already here, low and quiet and creeping right up my gravel road, ready to swallow every piece of peace I'd built for myself. And if I had trusted that instinct, if I had followed that cold warning hiding under my ribs, maybe I would have avoided what came next. Maybe I wouldn't have ended up fighting for my life on a rainy Missouri highway. Maybe I wouldn't have woken up 15 months later realizing someone had tried to erase me from the world and take everything I loved while I was asleep. But I didn't listen, I ignored the signs, the little tremors that crack open the ground before the earthquake hits hard. And the truth is, the lake tried to warn me, the land tried to warn me, even the silence tried to warn me, but I was too damn happy, too damn comfortable, and too damn blind to see that someone out there had drawn a line around my world and decided their plan was already in motion, and I was just the obstacle standing between them and whatever empire they wanted to build on my grave. The night everything came crashing down on me didn't start like some dramatic Hollywood moment with lightning cracking across the sky, or tires screeching, or some creepy music in the background. Nah man, it started stupidly normal, with this soft, cold drizzle drifting across the Missouri back roads like a thin, wet veil, the kind that doesn't look dangerous until the asphalt turns slick as butter, and every turn feels like a gamble. I had just picked up a new sump pump and a couple bags of drainage gravel from the hardware store, tossing them in the back of the truck, while muttering about how Missouri weather couldn't decide if it wanted to freeze me or drown me or both. And then I took the long way home, because honestly I liked that route better. No traffic, no noise, just trees bending in the wind, and the occasional deer sprinting across like they owned the place. The radio hummed low, playing some country song about heartbreak and mud tires, and I remember thinking I'd Call my sister later because she kept bugging me about the trout spawning early and she wanted me to check the shoreline, and I was smiling a little to myself, feeling that small, stupid comfort of simple plans when I saw them headlights bright. And too damn close, whipping around a blind curve like the driver forgot what a brake pedal was. At first, I figured it was just another local hauling tail home, because folks out here treat speed limits like suggestions, but something felt wrong. Instantly, the truck was drifting out of its lane like a drunk ghost sliding sideways across the yellow line, and my pulse jumped, because there was no shoulder, no room to swerve, just the wet, slick road, and those blinding lights coming at me. So I eased right real careful, but the other truck eased right too, matching me like some twisted mirror dance. And in that split second, when our headlights lined up perfectly, I saw him, the driver, broad shoulders, ball cap pulled low, and that damn tattoo wrapped around his left wrist, jagged and black like a storm cloud etched into his skin, the same tattoo I saw on my land, the same one burning in my memory like a warning I should have listened to, and before I could even process it, before I could inhale or swear or react, he hit me full speed, metal smashing into metal in a sound so violent it ripped the breath straight out of me. It wasn't a crash, it was an attack. The whole world folded sideways, the truck spun, the windshield exploded. In a rain of shattered glass, my head whipped so hard I swear my skull cracked open, and all I felt was this white-hot flash like lightning tearing through my body, ribs collapsing, pelvis shattering, breath leaving me like someone punched the air out of my soul. And then nothing, absolutely nothing, not darkness, not dreams, just cold, empty nothingness, like I'd been unplugged from existence and shoved into a void, and I don't know how long that nothing lasted, because in nothing time doesn't exist. But when I clawed my way back into myself, it felt like I was swimming upward through layers of freezing water, every inch of my body screaming, machines beeping, lights stabbing my eyes, voices blurring into noise, and the smell of antiseptic burned the inside of my nose. I tried to talk, but my throat felt shredded like I'd swallowed fire. The ceiling above me was some ugly hospital tile, and everything around me looked foggy like I was underwater. Doctors, nurses, monitors, everything blending together like a bad dream. And I remember hearing someone say, "He's awake," or something close to it, and another voice saying, "Easy, Mr. Doe," and that hit me weird because Doe wasn't my name, and for a moment I thought my brain was scrambled. Worse than I feared, but the doctor leaned into view, explaining things in this calm, meant to be comforting tone about how I'd been in a coma, how my body had taken a massive beating, how I had a list of injuries that sounded like I got dropped down a mountain: traumatic brain injury, fractured pelvis, shattered ribs, collapsed lung, internal bleeding, the whole damn medical circus. And all I could think was, why the hell are they calling me John Doe? And that's when he explained it. My ID was gone, thrown out of the truck, my phone shattered beyond recognition, my face swollen and busted to the point nobody could identify me. So the EMTs had tagged me exactly by protocol: adult male, mid-40s, unknown identity, and that's who I stayed for weeks, man, while my sister had no clue where I was, while the cops searched rivers, while people assumed the worst, while the world quietly erased me from its memory. They eventually matched my fingerprints with some old employment record and realized who I was, but by then the damage had already started brewing, because those weeks of being nameless, those weeks of being erased, were exactly the opening someone needed to slip a lie into the system, someone who wanted me gone, not just physically, but legally, someone who filed a death report calling me deceased at the scene with my remains unrecoverable, someone who used that lie to grab my land like a vulture swooping on fresh roadkill. And when I finally could stand again on legs that felt like borrowed metal, when I could speak without pain slicing my ribs, when I could remember my own damn name and say it out loud, the world outside the hospital had already moved on, like I died for real, and the county records believed it, the HOA believed it, hell, even my own neighbors believed it, because somebody had filed the paperwork, somebody had claimed my land, somebody had taken what I built and slapped a fake memorial plaque on my lake, calling it a gift donated by the late Randall whatever. And the worst part wasn't even that they stole my home, man. The worst part was that someone tried to kill me and erase me all in one move, and they almost succeeded. And the minute I realized that, anger and fear twisted together in my chest like barbed wire, because waking up from a coma should have been the hardest part of my life, but it wasn't, not even close, because the real nightmare wasn't behind me. The real nightmare was waiting outside those hospital doors, wearing a friendly smile, holding a fake death certificate, and claiming they owned everything I loved, and I didn't even know it yet. But the minute I stepped out into the world again, I wasn't just a man recovering from an accident, I was a ghost fighting. To prove I existed, and the people who stole my lake thought I'd stay dead, stay quiet, stay gone. But they were wrong, man, so wrong. Because the second I learned what they took from me, something inside me lit up like a fuse, slow burning, steady, and ready to explode. When the rehab doors finally slid open and I stepped back into the world, it didn't feel like freedom or relief or any of that inspirational crap people love to talk about. Nah, man. It felt like stepping into someone else's life, like waking up from a nightmare, only to realize the dream was still happening right in front of you. And my legs were shaking, my ribs still throbbing, my lungs hissing like they needed time to trust air again. But even with the soreness, even with the fog still clinging to the edges of my mind, there was one thing burning clear as daylight in my chest. I was going home. I was going back to the lake that saved me, back to the cabin I rebuilt with my bare hands, back to the quiet that had held me together long before that truck tried to tear me apart. So I rented a beat-up sedan, tossed my hospital bag inside, and drove slow like a man, trying to tie his soul back to reality 1 mile at a time. And the closer I got to my land, the tighter something twisted inside my gut. But I kept telling myself it was nerves or excitement or that strange half fear, half hope that hits you after being gone too long. But the road didn't care what I told myself, because when I turned off the county lane onto my private gravel drive, the whole damn world flipped on its axis. There was a giant polished sign I had never seen before standing tall across my entrance car with painted fancy letters like it was some vacation destination, saying Willow Beach, Lakeside Haven, HOA, private access. Members only. In that last line, it punched the air right out of my chest, because it wasn't just wrong, it was an insult, a violation, a slap, saying you don't belong here, this is ours now. And the gate man, there was a gate across my own road, a real one, metal bars, motion lights, keypad badge reader, like some wannabe fortress guarding what used to be my peace, my land, my damn home, and my old wooden marker with my last name carved into it, gone like I never existed. I stood there, fingers trembling, gripping the cold metal railing of the gate, until I felt my pulse thumping through it like my heart was trying to break the damn thing open. But my keys were useless. The gate didn't know me, the system didn't know me, hell, the whole world didn't know me anymore. So I did the only thing a man with nothing left to lose would do. I stepped off the road into the ditch, climbed around the gate, and walked in boots sinking into the gravel I had laid down myself, and every step I took felt like walking deeper into a nightmare. Solar lanterns lined the path every 20 feet like runway lights, guiding strangers into the heart of the place I had once protected from the world. And then I saw at the lake, my lake swallowed up by something I didn't recognize, the natural shoreline buried under, trucked in white sand, umbrellas jammed into the ground like colorful spears, Adirondack chairs lined up in neat, perfect rows like an amusement park, kayak racks, hammocks, string lights, tiki torches, families, laughing, music playing, someone grilling like it was the 4th of July, and every bit of it sat on the bones of the land I fixed up with love and sweat, and every piece of it screamed that the world had moved on without me, taking my paradise and turned it into a damn theme park. I couldn't breathe for a second because the grief and rage mixed into something sharp like being stabbed from the inside. But then I saw movement near the kayak, stand a young guy in a bright yellow staff shirt, stacking paddles, laughing with some tourist. And as he stretched to hang a life vest, his sleeve slid down, and there was the tattoo, jagged and black, wrapped around his wrist, like a brand, like a signature, like a memory, hitting me so hard my knees almost buckled. The same tattoo from my property, the same tattoo from the truck, the same tattoo from the nightmare that stole 15 months from me. And for a second the world tunneled. All I could see was him. All I could hear was my pulse pounding like thunder. And every cell in my body screamed, run at him, grab him, drag him into the dirt, and demand answers for every lie, every stolen breath, every shattered bone. But something colder held me, still, something whispering, not yet, not like this. So I tore my eyes away from him and walked toward the cabin, my last anchor, my last piece of sanity. And from a distance it looked the same roofline, same porch, same windows. But the closer I got, the more the dread rose in my throat, because everything I love had been stripped, painted, replaced, sanitized, like they were trying to erase the fingerprints of the man who built at the cedar posts I stained by hand, wrapped now in cheap vinyl, my swing gone, replaced by some fake rustic decoration, the front door repainted a color so bland it should have come with a warning label. And when I pressed my face to the window, I saw inside, and the world cracked open, my furniture gone, my shelves empty, my books vanished, my father's compass gone, replaced by a stage picture of some perfect smiling family. Like a catalog. Display not my life, not my memories, not my cabin. They hadn't just taken it, they'd overwritten it like I was a glitch they deleted, like I never mattered, like I truly had died out there on that road. And the grief that hit me wasn't quiet or gentle. It was a hurricane twisting right up through my ribs. And I stepped back from the window, trying to breathe, trying to swallow the rage burning its way up my throat. And that's when I heard its tires crunching. Gravel behind me. I turned slow because something in me already knew who it was, and sure enough, that black SUV rolled up with all the smug confidence in the world. The back door swung open, and out stepped her, the woman whose voice still echoed in the back of my mind like a mosquito. "You can't swat Karen Woodley, HOA, President Queen of Petty Rules, Destroyer of Peace," wearing a navy pantsuit like she was here to give a TED Talk. Two security guys stepped out behind her, arms crossed, chest puffed like wannabe bodyguards, and she looked at me like I was trash someone forgot to put out on pickup day. And with that fake polite tone, she asked, "Can I help you?" And the absurdity almost made me laugh. But instead, I stepped forward, told her my name, told her this was my land, my cabin, my lake, and her expression shifted, but not the way it should have. Not surprise, not shock, not guilt, nah, man. She looked annoyed like I was inconveniencing her, and she calmly told me that couldn't be, because Mr. Din had passed away last year. And then she opened her damn clipboard and showed me paperwork with my name listed under deceased, and the HOA listed as steward of the property, and something inside me snapped. I told her, "Look at me, look at my face, do I look dead to you?" And she didn't blink. She told me I was trespassing on private HOA property. And behind her, the two security guys moved forward like they were about to escort me off my own damn porch. And then the sheriff pulled up, lights off, eyes scanning the scene, and for a split second hope flickered in my chest until he asked me for ID, and I had nothing but the truth, and the truth didn't matter, because on his screen, on the record in his hands, I was dead, legally dead, officially dead, erased, and the HOA owned everything. And when I told him I was alive, when I told him the system was wrong, he sighed this tired, defeated sigh like he'd seen this kind of mess 100 times and didn't have the energy to unravel it. And he told me I needed to leave until ownership could be verified, and if I refused, they'd have to detain me, and the humiliation burned so hot I thought I'd explode. But I wasn't stupid, not then, not when I was outnumbered, outgunned, outdocumented. So I stepped back, swallowed the anger, swallowed the grief, swallowed every piece of pride I had left, and said, "Fine, I'll go." But then I pointed right at Karen, and I told her I'm not done, not even close. And for the first time since she stepped out of that SUV, I saw a flicker of fear, a tiny crack in her mask, like somewhere deep down she knew the dead don't stay buried forever. And I had crawled my way back from the grave, and I was coming for every inch of my life they stole. And as I walked away, the lake behind me felt heavy, like it was watching, like it was waiting, like it knew the fight had only just begun. And I swear on everything I love, I wasn't going to lose this time. Walking away from my own land with the sheriff treating me like some trespassing stranger felt like trying to swallow broken glass. And every step down that gravel road felt heavier than the last, like each piece of dirt I stepped on was whispering that I didn't belong anymore. And the sky above me looked too big, too empty, too damn cruel. Because the place that had saved my life, the place that had healed me better than any doctor or therapist ever could, was now locked behind a stupid metal gate run by people who didn't know a damn thing about the blood and sweat I poured into that cabin. And man, I swear, every part of me wanted to turn around and rip that gate off its hinges, drag Karen into the dirt, and scream in her face until she admitted what she did. But I wasn't stupid, I wasn't dead anymore either, and dead men don't fight for justice, but the living sure as hell do. So I drove straight to the county building, the one with the flat roof and flickering lights and walls lined with filing cabinets older than half the people in town. And when I pushed through those squeaky glass doors, I swear the air smelled like stale coffee dust. And disappointment, the receptionist was this older lady with cat-eye glasses and the kind of tired politeness only government workers have mastered. And when I told her I needed property records for the Dent parcel, she typed my name, then froze her eyebrows, climbed up her forehead like they were trying to escape, and she turned her screen just enough for me to see the nightmare printed in black and white, my land listed under the lakeside. Haven HOA, the previous owner marked deceased, the provisional death notice filed by some guy named Pierce, and the dates circled like a punchline to a bad joke, and I felt my stomach turn like the world dropped out from under me. And she whispered that something looked wrong, and her voice shook like she was scared of even saying it out loud, and asked if I had any ID. And I tried to explain I lost everything in the crash, my wallet, my phone, my whole damn identity scattered across the road that night. And she looked at me with this sad sympathy that almost made me break right therein. That dingy little office, but then she lowered her voice, leaned closer, and said, "We've had complaints about that HOA. They push things too hard," and I felt a spark of hope flicker. Because someone finally admitted something was off, she clicked deeper into the records and pulled up a scanned copy of the so-called death report. And it wasn't even a real certificate, just a flimsy affidavit with vague wording and an outdated seal like someone slapped it together in 5 minutes using a broken printer. And when she whispered the name of the deputy clerk who approved it and then told me he'd resigned, I knew, damn, well, this wasn't some paperwork mistake. This was intentional. This was dirty. This was planned. And I left the office gripping copies of every file she could legally hand me, which wasn't much, but it was enough to prove someone had shoved a lie into the heart of the system. And that lie had grown roots like poison ivy wrapping around everything I loved and choking it out, and I knew I couldn't fight this alone. I needed someone who understood how to weaponize paperwork the way Karen weaponized that HOA clipboard. So I drove across town to this tiny law office wedged above a convenience store, the kind of place with crooked blinds and dusty motivational posters hanging crooked, and I knocked on that door like my life depended on it. Because honestly it did, and the guy who opened the door wasn't some slick city lawyer. He was mid-40, sharp eyes, rolled sleeves tie, undone coffee stains on his desk, and a brain that screamed danger to anyone stupid enough to try something illegal in his county, and his name was Malik. And when I sat down across from him and told him everything, the coma, the accident, the fake death, the takeover, the gate, the tattooed guy, the sheriff, the lake, being turned into a damn resort, all of it, he didn't interrupt. Once he didn't laugh or think I was crazy, he just listened, tapping his pen lightly like every detail was a nail going into the HOA's coffin. And when I finally stopped for air, he leaned back, crossed his arms, and said, "Randall, you didn't just get hit by a truck, you got hit by a coordinated scheme." And I felt that word in my bone, scheme, because suddenly everything that didn't make sense lined up: the drone, the measurements, the SUV, the crash, the paperwork. Hell, even the way Karen looked at me like she'd rehearsed my funeral speech. And Malik told me straight, "These people forged your death, exploited loopholes, transferred your land, illegally built structures without permits, and very possibly hired someone to run you off the road." And then he stood, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "But we can undo all of it, not easily, not cleanly, but we can dismantle them piece by damn piece." And when he brought in 2 more people, I realized this wasn't just a lawyer anymore. This was a team. This was war. First was Heather, environmental specialist, boots, still muddy jacket, patched elbows, hair tied back in the snow. Nonsense, not like she'd been wrestling with nature. Whole life she spread photos across the table of my lake. But not the lake. I remembered, no, this was water clouded with sediment runoff readings, spiking turbidity levels high enough to choke the shoreline. And she whispered, "They're killing your lake every day. Those tourists drag their feet across the sand. Every time a kayak launches, every time one of those tiki torches drips chemicals into the water, your lake dies a little more." Then came Ray Financial. Bloodhound who could sniff out fraud faster. Then a dog finds dropped fries, and he slammed down a stack of HOA invoices thicker than my patience and pointed at a line that said shoreline enhancement paid to Everglow Commons LLC. And the minute he said that name, something in my memory tugged hard. Then he pulled up another file, a donor list, a financial transfer from a guy who died years ago, and my skin crawled because suddenly the scope of this thing wasn't small, it was massive. This wasn't just one Karen with too much free time. This was organized, fraudulent, calculated. Then Ray found a payment from the HOA to that same Pierce 2 weeks before my crash. And that was the moment everything inside me went quiet, not calm, not peaceful, just quiet like the breath before a storm. And Malik said it out loud. What none of us wanted to admit: they paid him. That wasn't maintenance. That wasn't landscaping. That was a job. And I knew deep down exactly what job it was, and my hands curled into fists so tight my knuckles went white, because for the first time Since waking up in that hospital bed, I saw the truth. Without blinking, someone tried to erase me because I was in the way, because my land was the prize, because the lake I rebuilt with my bare hands was a gold mine for them, a tourist paradise, a money machine, and I was supposed to be dead and out of their path. But I didn't stay dead. I crawled back, and now I was ready to drag all of them into the light. So Malik laid out the battle plan like a general prepping soldiers. He said we needed proof of life, medical files, timestamp charts, nurse logs that showed I was alive when they filed me dead. Then we needed proof of fraud, fake badge, fake death notice, money transfers, misused funds, environmental damage, forged signatures, and above all, we needed witnesses, someone who'd been pressured, someone who saw something, someone who unknowingly got sucked into their lies. And then my phone buzzed with a message from my sister asking where I was, and something in me snapped. Right back to that moment when she walked into my hospital room, crying over the brother she thought she'd lost. And I realized she was part of this too. She had been targeted, manipulated, used. So the next morning, I met her at this little diner with squeaky booze and coffee that tasted like hot sadness. And when she walked in wearing her scrubs, looking exhausted and fragile, I swear guilt punched me right in the gut, because she'd suffered through those missing months while I lay unconscious in some bed with doctors calling me John Doe. And when she sat down, she broke before I could speak, tears spilling as she whispered, "They told me you were gone, Randy. They told me your truck was found empty, and you were probably washed into a river." And her hands trembled so bad, I had to hold them steady. And she told me about the man who came to her house with a clipboard telling her about stewardship forms and how it would protect my legacy. She didn't know he wasn't a social worker. She didn't know his badge was fake. She didn't know he was the same tattooed bastard who slammed his truck into mine, and she didn't know Karen hugged her and lied right to her face, saying I didn't suffer, that I died quickly, that signing the papers would keep my land safe. And my sister's voice cracked like a broken shell, because she thought she was helping me while they used her grief to steal everything I loved. And every word she said added gasoline to the fire already building inside me. And when she pushed a thick envelope across the table filled with letters, notices, flyers, business cards, and even the fake badge, something in me shifted. This wasn't grief anymore. It wasn't fear. It was purpose, a cold, sharpened purpose. And I told her she didn't fail me. They hunted her when she was vulnerable, and she whispered through tears, "Take it all back, Randy, legally, but take everything back." And I promised her, I promised her the lake wasn't lost. I wasn't lost. She wasn't lost. And when I walked out of that diner with that envelope in my jacket, I felt like I was carrying ammunition, evidence, fuel for a war I didn't ask for, but damn sure intended to win. And the moment I stepped back into Malik's office, the team gathered around me like soldiers ready for battle, and Ray looked at the envelope like it was treasure. Heather leaned over her tablet, ready to analyze anything. Malik straightened his tie, like the general stepping onto the front lines. And in that cramped, dusty office with flickering lights and stacks of papers leaning like unstable towers, he looked at me and says, "Time to take your life back." And I believed him, because now we had everything we needed, not just paperwork, not just proof, but fire, real burning fire. And for the first time since that truck crushed my world, I felt something powerful rising inside me. I wasn't just fighting for land or a cabin or a lake. I was fighting to exist again, to reclaim the life they tried to bury. And I swear on that water that saved me, I was ready to burn their entire operation down legally, but mercilessly, one lie at a time, one signature at a time, one truth at a time, until nothing of their empire remained but ashes floating over the lake that would always, always be mine. The night everything shifted for real didn't come with thunder or some dramatic storm rolling across the lake. Nah, man. It came with a cold silence, one of those eerie still nights where the wind forgets it exists and the trees stop whispering and the moon hangs too bright, like it's watching you and waiting for something to break. And we were all crammed in a raised, dusty garage, surrounded by stacks of receipts, crumpled files, leaked emails, and drone screenshots, when Malik burst through the door, looking like he'd just walked out a crime scene instead of a law office, and he slammed a stack of printed statements on the metal workbench, and they scattered like guilty confessions caught in flight. And he said, "Found it," with this low, lethal satisfaction that made the hair on my arm stand up. And Ray skimmed the highlighted lines and muttered $12,500 directly from the HOA to Everglow Commons, signed by Pierce. And Heather looked up, eyes dark and sharp, and asked when, and Malik replied, 2 weeks before my crash, and everything inside me went so damn still. I swear even my heartbeat paused because every suspicion, every instinct, every gut feeling that had been gnawing at me snapped into focus in one ruthless frame: the drone, the SUV, the dude taking measurements, the tattoo on the wrist, the staged sympathy letters, the fake funeral whispers, the frantic rush to seize my land. This wasn't random. This wasn't messy. This wasn't accidental. This was a paid job. A planned hit, not to scare me, not to move me out, not to intimidate me, but to erase me and replace me. And that truth sank into me like a blade, and Ray let out this low whistle while Heather whispered, "Oh my God," and Malik said quietly that this wasn't just fraud, this was conspiracy and attempted murder. And I felt my fists clench until I could feel bone grinding against bone, because suddenly the world wasn't foggy anymore. Everything was clear and vicious and true, and before I could even take a breath, Heather's drone pinged emotion alert, and she frowned, tapped her tablet, zoomed in, and froze, her voice dropping to a tight whisper, "Someone's at your lake right now." And the drone feed showed a shadow moving through the gazebo, the one the HOA built like a trophy, the one sitting on my land like a stain, and the shadow bent down, lifted something metallic. And as Heather zoomed closer, I saw the Truth gasoline cans, 2 of them, and I felt my lungs tighten like someone punched me from the inside. Ray cursed. Malik muttered, "This is destruction of evidence." And Heather said, "He's burning the scene." And then the figure stepped under the moonlight, and the drone caught his face and the tattoo. And I swear the world shrank to the size of that screen. Donald Pierce, the same bastard who ran me off the road, the same bastard who filed me dead, the same bastard Karen probably paid, the same bastard who laughed when he almost killed me, and he was standing on my land with gasoline and a lighter, and we didn't even hesitate. We moved. Ray grabbed the keys, Malik grabbed his phone, Heather grabbed her drone controller, and I was already running out the garage door before anyone spoke. And we drove with headlights off, tires crunching, gravel hearts thundering like war drums, the drone hovering above the tree line, guiding us like some silent guardian angel. And when we got close enough to kill the engines, we ditched the trucks and continued on foot, crouched low like soldiers creeping through the dark. The smell hit us first. Chemicals, sharp, heavy, unmistakable, the smell of someone about to erase the last thing tying him to a crime. And when we crawled behind a line of trees and peeked through the gaps, the sight punched me harder than the truck ever did. Pierce dumping the last drops of gasoline across the gazebo floor, stepping back, flicking his lighter, once, twice, flames catching in the wind like hungry beasts roaring up the wooden beams in seconds. And he lit it with this weird calm, like he'd done this before, like he wasn't scared of fire because he was already burning inside. And Heather whispered, keep still, the drone's recording everything." And my breath came out hard because every instinct, every scar, every ounce of rage inside me screamed, "Run, tackle him, drag him into the dirt, and make him confess right here, right now," while the flames lit the sky. But Malik grabbed my arm and hissed, "No, we have him, let him run," because we had proof now, undeniable. Visual proof. Pierce shifted when the fire popped and crackled, and in that brief moment, he turned his head and looked straight toward the tree line. And man, I swear he saw me. Even if he couldn't see my face, he felt me watching him the way predators feel each other in the dark. And for a heartbeat, our worlds collided, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not guilt, not fear, something colder, acceptance, like he knew this day was coming. And then he bolted, sprinting toward his truck, engine roaring, tires spitting, mud kicking, dirt in the air as he disappeared down the service road. The flames grew taller, licking the sky, the gazebo collapsing slowly like a dying animal groaning under its own burning bones. And we walked toward it, not to save it, but to witness it, because that thing wasn't a structure to me. It was an infection, a symbol of everything stolen from me. And watching it collapse in a shower of sparks felt like watching lies die in real time. Ray stared at the inferno and smirked, saying, "Well, Karen's gonna have a fun time explaining this." And Malik exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks, saying, "The fire chief will find accelerant trails everywhere." And Heather lowered her drone, whispering with this fierce calm, "This is it, this is the hammer." And the distant sound of sirens began to echo across the water, but none of us rushed, none of us panicked, none of us moved, because this wasn't danger anymore. This was justice slowly waking up. And when the fire chief arrived, covered in soot, inspecting the beams and sniffing the ashes, he Muttered someone wanted this gone, and Malik stepped forward saying we can give you a name, and Heather handed over the footage, and the chief's jaw tightened the second he saw the flame ignite in Pierce's hand, and he looked straight at me and asked if I knew the man, and I said, "You tried to kill me once," and the chief said, "Well, looks like you just tried again," and that was the first time I felt something shift in my favor, like the world finally tilted to balance itself, and by noon the next day we were in the county prosecutor's office, sitting under humming lights that flickered like truth finally waking up, and the prosecutor Dana watched the footage and didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't breathe until the fire exploded on screen, and she leaned back, saying, "Congratulations, you just handed me arson, insurance, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder." And that was just the beginning, because Malik handed her the thick envelope Linda gave me, and Dana flipped through the evidence, letters, filed lies. Fake badges, forged signatures, fraudulent stewardship forms, illegal construction, unfinished inspections, donor, fraud, money trails, everything. And she said one sentence that made the air shift: "We're paying the HOA president a visit." When we walked into that HOA clubhouse in the middle of their board meeting, Karen was standing at the podium lecturing homeowners about rules and community values. And the second she saw us, her face twisted into this mask of pure panic and denial, and she tried to act superior, telling Dana she didn't have to answer anything, that this was private business, that the dead don't walk into board meetings. But Dana dropped the printed still frame of Pierce, setting the fire right onto the table, and the entire room froze, and Karen's lips trembled like she'd swallowed ice. And then everything cracked wide open. Her nephew Tim stood and shouted she coached Pierce herself, and Karen shrieked that he was lying, and Dana said, "Karen Woodley, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, coercion, environmental violations accessory to attempted murder, falsification of documents." And Karen screamed that the lake belonged to her. I stepped forward and said, "He is very much alive." Her eyes locked onto mine like she finally realized the dead man she buried had come back to drag her empire down into its grave. And within a week, Pierce was caught in the back of his truck smelling like gasoline, pleading guilty, because cowards celebrate in the dark but confess in the light. And Karen sat in court, hearing the judge strip her of everything, declaring my land restored, clearing my name, burying every lie they tried to plant. And when he said ownership is returned to Mr. Randall Denton, my sister squeezed my arm and whispered, "It's over." But it wasn't, not yet, not until I stood on my land again, not until I burned the last lie they left behind. So when the county workers tore down the docks and ripped out the rental huts and hauled away every trace of the resort, I walked down to the charred remains of the gazebo and stared at the stupid bronze plaque, the one that said, "Donated by the late Randall Denton," shining like a sick joke in the ashes. And I took the sledgehammer Ray handed me and smashed that plaque until it was nothing but twisted metal and dust. And together we gathered the broken pieces and threw them into the flames, letting smoke carry every lie Karen wrote about me into the sky. And Linda slipped her arm through mine, asking, "What now?" And I looked out at my lake. The water calmed the air, cleaned the land waiting for me, like it always had. And I told her now I rebuild, because they tried to kill me twice, but I'm still here, and this lake will never belong to anyone but me. And as the fire died down and the night settled into something quiet and real, I finally felt alive, fully awake, fully home.